Listen. Listen to the silence. Listen to each other listening to the silence. This silence, this attempt at silence, this is the sound of a shared contract between us. There is an expectation, there is a hope that something will change, that we will change. But in order for that transformation to happen, we have to be open to the possibility that by the end of the day, we are transformed. And this is the transformative power of the shared experience. All the world's a stage and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts. This often quoted metaphor of the world as stage comes from Shakespeare's As You Like It. Like many well-known ideas, this was not unique to Shakespeare. It had been thought of before. In fact, the Roman poet Juvenal said, "All Greece is a stage and every Greek is an actor." Well, I trained, believe it or not, to be an actor at the Bristol Old Vic Theatre School. And when you're taught about the origins of live theatre, teachers often start with the Greeks, but the roots of theatre actually goes back much, much further into our prehistory. The world's oldest religion started with oral tradition, great mythic tales told, learnt, passed down generation to generation with accompanying ritual. These shared stories told us who we were and helped us to galvanize meaning in a chaotic, disordered, and at times terrifying world. Like fire, like cutting tools, like tribalism, like religion itself, theatre is a universal human trait. To be human is to tell stories, and a human devoid of story has little hope of being mentally or emotionally fulfilled. Perhaps that's one of the problems we have today. Perhaps our tribes are too big. We struggle to agree on what our shared national or global story is. Dare I mention it, but perhaps that's why Brexit cut to the bone for so many people, because here we had two polar opposite stories, both alike in their ambiguity. And we as a nation have to navigate our way through that. And this is where the live shared experience trumps the abridged soundbite tales of the Twitter sphere. For here, as a group, we are open to new ideas and experiences. We listen as a collective. There are no man-made barriers of Twitter handle names, online profiles, or 280-character rants, but rather an older, more primal community sitting side by side in a darkened space. That's probably enough about politics. Let's get back to religion. So, from all this early religion, the Greeks formulated, codified, and maximized theatre to reach as many people as possible. Audiences would be entertained, would be excited and educated, even warned. Plays like Antigone, Medea, Bacchae, Oedipus. Crowds would congregate in colossal amphitheatres to hear these tales of magic and reason. Life and death stories with grandiose themes of gods and men. Now, fast forward a few thousand years, jump ship from Greece, and you end up in the golden age of Elizabethan theatre, a time of poets and playwrights, of Marlowe, Johnson, and of course, of Shakespeare. Now, at Shakespeare's great theatres, all classes of men and women would come together to hear a play. With its etymology in the 14th century, from the Latin word audentia, meaning a hearing or a listening, the English theatregoers were known as audiences, the French merely spectators. But it's easy to see why theatre was so important for the Elizabethans, because entertainment was non-existent. There was no Netflix, there was no Amazon, there was cockfighting, there was public execution, there was the compulsory church service on a Sunday. But now, what about now? What about us? Isn't it easier just to stay at home, just to watch YouTube or Facebook or Instagram? Well, yes, of course. Of course it's easier. But staying at home, stuck in your own mobile silo, you cannot be transformed in the same way. The reason for this is biological. Primatologists call our type of ape gregarious. We are social. We didn't evolve to be isolated. It makes sense then that our transformative practices will also be social. Hamlet said, suit the action to the word to the action, with this special observance that you o'erstep not the modesty of nature. For anything so o'erdone is from the purpose of playing, whose end, both from the first and now, was and is to hold, as 'twere a mirror, up to nature, to show virtue her feature, scorn her own image, and the very age and body of the time, his form and pressure. And if Hamlet is right, if art is a mirror to reflect back to society that breaks us, that makes us and shapes us, well, what change can come if all that is reflected back in the glass is today's isolated, modern, narcissistic individual? Theatre is under threat. I'm not talking about the Mamma Mias and the Harry Potters, they'll do just fine. But my battle is for theatre on the margins, the small, the local, the independent, fringe, the extraordinary. With rising costs and with an ever-increasing amount of sofa-bound inertia, it's becoming tougher and tougher to make the case for theatre. And yet we carry on. Because despite the mobile phones and the podcasts and the spaceships and the robots and all the rest of it, we are fundamentally analog creatures making our way in an increasingly digital world. One of the ways we can do that is to keep telling and hearing stories. My theatre company recently told the story of Macbeth. Nothing happened, we're okay. In that story, just after Macbeth hears of the death of his wife, he tells the audience, she should have died hereafter. There would have been a time for such a word. Tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to the last syllable of recorded time. And all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a poor player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. Cheery stuff. To Macbeth, a character obsessed with time, life is but a walking shadow, a poor player, an actor like me. For Macbeth, life isn't real. It has no meaning. And he's ultimately doomed because he embraces this nihilistic mindset of futility. We as an audience come together to watch this tragedy unfold. And we depart en masse, breathing a collective sigh of relief as we carry his warning with us. As an actor, I've noticed something interesting, that there is a connection, a kind of a laser beam of intention between the actor and the audience. A bit like the tongues of fire in Raiders of the Lost Ark, but without the face melty bit. And I'm not the first person to notice that. There was a guy called Webster in the 17th century. Sit in a full theatre and you will see so many lines drawn from the circumference of so many ears while the actor is at the centre. But I would argue that this connection goes further, and that this is why the shared experience has to be preserved and fought for. Because this connection runs between each and every member of the audience. A web of energy, a shared, tacit, and ongoing story. So theatre makers will continue to tell stories, and it is my hope, my plea, that we as an audience will continue to drag our sorry asses out of the living room and come and connect with a live moment. Because just like our tribal forebears, we are all looking for meaning. We're all trying to find our way in a chaotic, disordered, and at times terrifying world. And at some point, the play will end. The questions will cease. And all that will remain is our lasting legacy. The stories of who we were, how we lived, and what we learned along the way. Our revels now are ended. These our actors, as I foretold you, were all spirits and are melted into air, into thin air. And like the baseless substance of this vision, the cloud-capped towers, the gorgeous palaces, the solemn temples, the great globe itself, yea, all which it inherits shall dissolve. And like this insubstantial pageant faded, leave not a rack behind. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep.